So let's roll call. Let's go to the minutes. Would you like to cover those, Ann, at this point?
Yes, I sent a revised copy to the board members about 20 to 1.
Okay.
And there was, I received an email from Liz Tidyman, who offered a couple comments regarding proper recording of motions. So on page 2, under the Partners Association proposal, I would like to have the minutes accepted with the following change. And it's on the second page. The addition is as follows. Call the question on the motion. And the motion was to accept the partner's proposal. Bob Nicholson raised a point of order that was not acted upon because the motion to call the question was on the table. The motion to call the question was carried. The partner's proposal motion was voted on and carried. So that's the addition to the existing minutes, and I would like to have the minutes accepted with that revision.
So we need a motion to accept the minutes as written with the modifications so specified.
So move.
Second, Ruth seconds.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Tell
opposition?
me, was that you, Walt, that made the motion?
Yes, it was.
It was Walt.
Thank you.
Okay, any opposition? Well, you have your minutes, Ann.
Thank you kindly.
And thank you so much. Those are very great minutes.
Thanks.
Okay, so that takes care of the minutes. The next item on the docket is the financial report. Mark's not on, so I'm going to pass by that one, and I'm going to put on hold number 3 and number 4 because I know Jack Nicholson wanted to talk about Martha Marks and her departure, and so I'd like to just put that on hold and move on to the and as long as you got the floor, the NaCCRA web presence. Does that meet with your approval? Can we do that?
Jack Matheson here.
Oh, you are there, Jack. I'm sorry, I didn't have you hooked up. Okay, Jack, I just told the group that I was going to defer that until you got on the phone because I know you wanted to say a few words about Martha. And we have a motion in the agenda to recognize her for her service, but I know you wanted to add to that, and so I'd like to turn the floor over to you at that time to address the honoring and the gratitude that we'll express to Martha Marks. You there, Jack?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, would you like?
Jack Matheson is here.
So I'd like you at this point to say a word about your feelings and what you think we ought to do about giving sufficient thanks or adequate thanks to Martha for what she's done for us over the years.
Your message is not coming through very clearly.
Well, why don't you just say what you have to say about Martha Marks, and we'll listen attentively.
All right. I would like to have the board recommend and send to Martha Marks the fact that we need you, Martha, illustrated by the NaCCRA intervention that could have prevented the Life Care Retirement Center in Tampa Bay, Florida, from having gone bankrupt. This beautifully illustrates the importance of having a board, having a resident serving on the board of directors. NaCCRA policy believes that we can prevent bankruptcy when we have representation on the board of directors.
Okay. So are you putting that in the form of a motion then, Jack?
I would so move.
Okay, do I have some second, and then we'll have a little discussion. Any seconds?
I don't understand what the motion is. That residents
Oh,
serve on their board of directors of their CCRC?
yes, that we,
How can we vote on that?
huh?
I mean, our vote is meaningless.
The purpose of the motion is to try to have Martha reconsider her and the fact that we need her presence for the reasons stipulated.
Well, is she serving on the board in her CCRC? I mean, she's no longer the webmaster. She's no longer a member of NaCCRA. She dropped her membership.
Bob Nicholson here in Seattle. I have the one person on the board of NaCCRA that has personally visited El Castillo in Santa Fe, New Mexico, met with Martha personally in her apartment, and with a dozen or more of the residents of El Castillo. I have a comment to make. It is clear to me that Martha wants nothing to do with NaCCRA. Her email was clear, take me off every list.
Right.
I wrote her back after that very emphatic email she sent out, and I said, Martha, we so appreciate you. I have valued your presence and leadership. I have valued the residents at El Castillo and my time with them. I have valued the prospect of a state organization that you could contribute to in New Mexico. And I know personally from your lips and the lips of residents at El Castillo that there are major issues with the provider of El Castillo, where there is deep dissent and division in that community. I laid that before her, and I think that is going to be as strong a statement on behalf of all of us as we need to make. And if we go farther and push it farther, it will alienate her farther.
Bob, would it be your judgment that the board that she might value an endorsement of your comments by the entire board?
Yeah, I sent a copy of my email to her, to all the board, and Bob's sentiments, and we so value you and what Bob said, and we are all 100% in agreement with his expression to you.
Jack, what would that sound like to you? Would that be the sort of thing you would like to see sent to her, the endorsement of the full board, what Bob has already articulated?
Jack Matheson, yes, I would concur.
Well, this is Ann McKay. Doesn't that really speak to the motion that is being proposed to thank her for her service?
Yes,
Because
I think it does.
we don't
You would have to modify that motion a little bit.
We don't have a second to Jack's motion of.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we modify the expression of appreciation to do what Basil just said, that the board also joins, and however that wording is to be.
Joins Bob that we also endorse the comments made earlier to you by prior President Bob Nicholson.
Okay, Swalt Boyer, I'll second Bob's amendment and add that I think it ought to go in the form of a letter and not just an email.
Okay.
Signed by the president.
All right. Okay, so we have that.
Would you read the motion, please, as it's going to be presented?
As the secretary, I'll read what's on the agenda. The board
Thank you.
The board thanks Martha Marks for service over multiple years on the internet as the NaCCRA presence and for her assistance in the transfer of NaCCRA.com contents to its new home.
And then I would add, if I could, can you hear me clearly, Ann?
Yes, I can.
It does say, and further, the entire board, by vote this day, endorses the comments made earlier to you by prior President Bob Nicholson.
Okay.
So it would just simply have a sentence added on to it to further the entire board, whatever it says.
I don't know if anybody else is having trouble. My computer is freezing up and disconnecting me repeatedly. And so I have missed out on this discussion. I really don't know what we're talking about.
We probably all have a bit of that. You're frozen now on my screen. And basically it's caused by bandwidth, the amount of data that gets processed in various internet connections. Sometimes that's units we have in our houses, sometimes things we share at a community. So there's not much we can do about that. But you can always tune in on your phone and you won't have that interruption.
I can repeat it for Jean. Can you hear me, Jean? This is Ann.
Jean, are you there?
Jean? Maybe she's going to try it by phone.
Okay, maybe that's where she is.
Hi, Jane. Bob Nicholson calling. Are you at the church? Well, I wanted to be sure that you got the box, the little thank you box that I left for you.
Again now.
Well, listen, the second thing is,
Bob, we can
So
hear
now
you.
I'm back on again.
who's that
Okay,
wonderful
Jane.
elder that always
Okay, can you hear okay, Jane?
sets things up?
I can hear you now.
Okay, it's just one sentence that we would add to the motion that we put there.
Always wears a tie.
Adding that the entire
It's not way they-
board has endorsed the comments made earlier by
Ron was just
Bob Nicholson.
right there for me.
So
So
with
he
that,
upstairs.
that's trying
So I
to.
was in a flurry with him when he was downstairs.
So I'd like to go ahead and
So we got a lot of guests coming. I wanted to be sure we went into that. In
So is
Bob?
the process,
Bob, we can hear you.
I
You're
think I
live.
walked off and left the program calendar
Bob?
on his
Bob
desk.
Nicholson.
Okay, Bob, we'll mute you.
Yeah, mute Bob.
So, Ann, would you call the vote on this, and then
We're
we'll.
back to now. Okay. The motion.
Well, she said she laid it out for me, but I was,
Bob. We have a motion on the
that's
floor.
right, but I
And it's been
I was
seconded.
rattled by the,
And we hear Bob
you know,
carrying
Ron
on
didn't
his
say
own
would you
life
help me
in the
move,
background.
Now there are
there's a
two
guy
people,
by
three
himself
people
and
talking at the
stuff
same time.
he moved
Can't hear a
upstairs
thing.
and downstairs.
Yeah, I know.
Outside
I have
be
to wait
ready.
to get his
I
attention,
just,
but I don't know how to pull the plug on him. Valerie, are you anywhere near? Valerie.
I know. Well, anyway, but what I'm saying, I was the rattled one, and so I came away without the program calendar. But I'm going to be. But my other reason for calling is I was going to register with God.
You.
Bob Nicholson, turn off your sound.
Workshop. And can you take that reservation?
God,
God, what a mess.
I didn't sign up for this.
Bob.
I don't think he can.
What a
So
ride.
Well, my middle name is Rattled Bob.
Yeah. Well,
But I
can't
wanted,
hear.
well, no, I wanted to be ready when people arrived and be focused and keep things moving and not, and the program calendar was a minor thing. But everything went well, and I really appreciated the seal of John Calvin from Calvin College, Calvin Seminary, and the Worship Institute at Calvin. And it was well received. I mean, we had the paper parapet on the front of music stand to give it a little focus.
Well, it doesn't help. You're coming through. We've just all been on your same phone call.
And somehow, on the 12th, when I come down, I'll pick up.
Not paying attention.
I can't get him.
Okay.
Oh, Liz sent him a note, but I don't know that he's looking at it.
Well, there was a great turnout. I mean, you know, for the middle of the summer at a camping trip, it was really something. Well, listen, I'm on a conference call, but I'm going to check out first.
We are.
You're not kidding.
Hey. Hello.
Hey,
Hello.
Bob?
Yes.
Get off the phone. You're interrupting the meeting because you're on the phone.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for rejoining the meeting.
Hey, that was great, Ron.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we got, yeah, and if you get on another call,
I'm sorry. This is where I was preaching Sunday, and there were leftovers that she wanted to have an answer. I do apologize.
Well,
What the hell is you talking about?
just mute yourself from here on out.
All right.
Call. That's at the lower left-hand corner of your screen. You can always mute yourself.
Show me. Let's get that straight.
At the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, lower. You can always mute yourself. So let's go back to the vote of the motion that was on the board and the adaptation that we added to it. It's all on your agenda. We just added a sentence acknowledging that the entire board endorses the comments provided to you earlier by prior President Bob Nicholson. So I'd like to go ahead and call the vote now. I guess all in favor of that motion as modified?
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections?
Aye.
Any objections? Okay. Yes. And somebody wanted to make that in the form of a letter or letterhead, and we can do that. Okay? Okay. So let's go past that. And thank you very much, Jack, for that call, and thank you for the previous correspondence, Bob. Not the phone call, but the letter you sent to Martha. Ann, you want to go with the NaCCRA website?
All right. As you know, that the website is now is still active. It has been transferred to a different platform called MobiRise. Jack Cummings handled that. I will be the webmaster, and if you will look at the website, you will notice the physical appearance is a little different, but the content and the location of the content is pretty much the same. There's been one addition, and let me see if I could share the screen. Well, if you go to the NaCCRA.com website, you'll notice there's a category called resources, which includes the various the other websites that have different domain names. So we do have the ability now to have one-stop shopping, and the goal, as I would see it, is that our portal, NaCCRA.com, would be the one source of information for all information about NaCCRA. And I think that's hope to do.
Can you all pull up the NaCCRA.com now so that she's talking in the resource tab? Have you had a chance to look at it?
Do people have that ability to call up their computer screen?
I have it up. It's up and running on my machine right now. So if you want to talk us through
Okay, the screen is not being shared. If you can share your screen.
Well, let's figure out how to do that, okay? You know, I don't want to take everybody's time while I'm trying to do something I don't know how to do. But
Who's having construction in the background?
I'm looking for the thing to do that. Stop video. Oh, share screen. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. By golly. Well, now I lost the whole shooting match.
What page are you on? Ann, what page are you on?
This is on the NaCCRA website.
I'm there.
If
And
you look under the menu tab for resources,
Okay.
the other websites that Jack has developed are now under that resources tab. So you can go to NaCCRA.com and get all the information.
When I click on resources, I see resources, NaCCRA governance website, NaCCRA deep dive site,
Right.
contemplate page.
So,
Is that what we're supposed to see?
right. The rest of the website is pretty much is the same as it has been. The forum is using a different framework because the other forum was in a WordPress. This is not WordPress. This is an application called MobiRise. So over time, it will evolve. What I would like from you as board members is if you have anyone that you know of that is interested in web work, and I've asked Ruth has already agreed that the website content group can be under the communications committee.
Right.
With the goal to
That's correct.
have have kind of a consistent viewpoint, and so we're all kind of on the same page in terms of content.
Bob Nicholson here. I'm looking at the NaCCRA website. I love the green. I'm under resources, other organizational websites. We have had a very active and productive relationship with Brad Breeding of My Life site, and Ruth is working with him to do something in New Orleans. I would suggest that other organizations and websites have his website, which is My Life, FLIFESITE.
That thanks. That I can add. Any other thoughts or comments?
Well, I do have a few. I think that we've come a long way, you know, in my opinion, because when I got Martha's letter, which resigned and said, you know, by July 31st, I'm not going to be here anymore, and I need to transfer it in the next 30 days. It really surprised me a great deal. So I think that there's a couple people that we owe a great debt of gratitude to, in addition to Martha for the prior history, because Jack, first of all, made the transition. There is just not a copy here that you're looking at. There is also a copy that's being held at the partners, so we have backup on this. Am I right on that, Ann? So
yes, we do have all the WordPress files that were used by Martha, and the current website, as you see on the screen, is being backed up.
Yeah. So you know, in what could have been for me when I first heard it, when I first learned of this, which hasn't even been 30 days ago, we came from a website that I think has been improved to one where we have Ann who's willing to strap this on into the future. So I think that really there is a substantial progress on this that's been made in the month. And And for forever, we've ever since I've been active with NaCCRA, we've had a concern that not all our web preference is accessible on one site. Now, is there more room to do more than that? Well, I hope so. But for right now, we do have access to all the sites that are available at NaCCRA, and we have the ability. We've got a kind of a common branding that looks like our newsletter, that looks like our stationery. So I just think the board ought to feel a little good about this, to be frank. And so I invite comments, but I just realized that what's happened in the last 30 days, this has been kind of an area where we've had some jeopardy that's been averted. So thanks to you, Ann, and to Jack, who's not here to hear it.
Yeah, and I second that. This is Ruth, because indeed we need a clear vision to integrate all the information, and having it on one website and then is really perfectly wonderful. So I just thank you again, Ann, for all, and to Jack.
Yeah, Jack gets the thanks this month, and we'll worry about what happens next month.
Yeah, that's just good.
Okay. So any other comments on the continuity? Ruth Walsh, you're next with the discussion of branding, website, you can forget, but Lifeline and more is, we're all ears.
All right, and so I've at partners on all of this, and she's quite anxious. She is not able to be on today, but one of her things was the fact that we need to discuss and have any other further decisions with this coming issue of Lifeline. We want to get that out the first part of the next month. And so we really need to discuss anything else that needed to be added or any changes that need to be made so that we can, she says, please, if there are any decisions that would need to be made, we have to take and do them right quick so that we can, she and I can talk tomorrow, and then we will proceed from there. Her issue is the timeline of how we're trying to do this, because it has to go to the processing place, and then they have to make all the rest of the corrections, and then try to get that out into the mail after it's all written, duplicated and assembled, and then out in the mail by about the 11th sorry, my month's all messed up. But we need to try to get this done quickly so that we can get the next Lifeline out. So if you have anything else that needs to be given to Kim to fix, can you just do that right fast so we can get all the corrections made and she can then work with it?
Now, does everybody, I think the first question I would have, Ruth, does everybody have a copy of the proposal that, on the editorial committee that includes a lot of people, but does anybody who needs to see it, does everybody have a copy? Has it been distributed?
Yes. It has been distributed, and it was distributed by Jack and then again by Kim. So I think everyone should have the updatedest copy.
Yep.
And and we got to get any other corrections there are, anything added, anything subtracted to Kim, so she could start the process of making it camera ready and off to go to the printer.
Bob Nicholson here. I think it is important from a PR point of view, perhaps to highlight the board's appreciation for Martha Marks, naming her and naming El Castillo for the outstanding work and the fact that her work is continuing, and then however you want to describe it, but only 4 or 5 sentences, and we have a number of members at El Castillo in Santa Fe. We need to let those fellow NaCCRA members know of the deep appreciation for Martha, who could become a negative in terms of NaCCRA with these NaCCRA members in New Mexico.
All right. So my only other snare and a delusion here is the fact that we've been trying to keep this next edition down to a reasonable pages. And if you look at what or if you had a chance to look at what we had, it's chock-a-block full. And I don't know, because if we added another page, that would mean actually 3 more pages we would have to add. And I don't know how to go about that process.
Bob, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Would you be satisfied if, excuse me, the lawnmower's outside my window right now, so wait a minute. It's gone. So would you be, is this something we could handle on the web? Is this something we could handle with a bit notes and bits, or notes and news thing? We are kind of full. We're trying to drop.
Are you going to have a president's column?
Sure.
There is a president's column in here, but it's full. Jack. It is full.
Well, maybe it can get unfull if this board feels strong enough about it. They can, we can put something in. It wouldn't take too many words to do that.
Well, I think,
right.
You can argue about the fullness or the board or the president's column. My point is, however you do it, NaCCRA members in New Mexico.
I can't hear.
Oh, it's not as close as it once was.
No, my point is not one of mechanics and layout and space. It's one of membership development and continuation of the members in New Mexico. They need to know publicly, even in 3 sentences, of our affirmation of Martha Marks. It can be in the president's column. It can be in a box at the bottom of page 3. It can be on the e-blast. It probably should be in both.
Bob, let me make a suggestion. If the current issue ready to go is full, perhaps we could put it out in notes and news. I
was going to say that's a great vehicle.
Yeah, and then repeat it in the next following lifeline. I know that there's consideration of going to 6 issues, back to 6
right.
issues, and 8 a year, something like that anyway. And if they're more frequent, then a delay won't be that bad, and it'll still get the message across to the people in New Mexico.
I think your idea, Walt, of the notes and news, because that can get out quickly, and that would be a wonderful idea. And then as you suggest, put more information about that in the next issue of Lifeline. But the time is of the essence as we work to do this. And so, if everybody would agree, huh?
Ruth.
Yes.
Is there another draft? I know Jean had made some suggestions for the. Has any of that been incorporated into the copy?
I am not sure, because Kim and I have been not able to make connections, but as far as I know, she's incorporated all.
Would it be helpful to get a copy of that? I mean, the latest draft?
All right. We'll ask editors to send the latest draft to us all again.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
All right. But if everyone would agree that we would ask Jack to do a special issue of Notes and News on what issue of Lifeline, that would facilitate things no end. If you would not.
Okay, thank you. Was there a second?
Is there a second? I will second it.
Second it.
Yeah.
It's a motion.
Ready
The
for
motion
the vote?
was to add content about the recruitment efforts at El Castillo in New Mexico in the news and notes and the next issue of the Lifeline. Is that
And
correct?
the work done by Martha. Yeah.
Okay. And well, all right, there was a second, so I guess we call for the vote.
Before you vote on it, I think that it is important that I review whatever is put in print, because Martha is prickly and a wrong phrase and a wrong word will do more damage than good.
She's already quit.
Good observation.
All right.
Good observation. We need to keep that in mind.
We still don't need to make more enemies. That's right.
All right, so we will tack that on to you, Jack. Bob, to look at, and then your nod, and we will go for it. Is that agreeable?
Agreeable.
All right. So,
Call the question.
Basil, call for the question.
Who called the question?
It was.
Is it were you all?
Ruth called. I did, but put Ruth down. Call for the question. She called the question.
All right. Ruth, call for the question.
Is Basil here? Basil, are
Yes.
you on?
Where did he go?
I'm gonna.
Are you thinking?
He turned off his sound.
I muted it when the lawnmower was troublesome, so I'm
Okay.
still here.
All right. So we have called for the question.
I know that, so it's time for a vote, right?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Okay, you have that. So let's move past that one.
All right.
I have an observation to make before we move on. Ruth said that there's an updated version of Lifeline that was sent out. I didn't get anything. I got the original version that Jack Cummings sent out, and that was it.
Right. I will ask Kim Barkley to send to you a copy of that to all of the members of the committee of the updated that we have.
That was the only version we received, Jean.
All right. Because she has made some few corrections has made, so I'll just ask her to send copies of all of that to the members of the committee.
Bruce, can you ask her to do that today, and then we'll ask for feedback by weekend.
Now, is that members of the committee or members of the board?
Should be members of the committee.
All right.
Of the committee.
Well, if we're not on the committee, then we don't get it.
Yeah.
We'll give copies to everybody. Everybody can have
We'll send copies, yes, to everybody.
But just to review the bidding, we were setting up an editorial board. The editorial board, it seems to me, ought to come to come with one copy that's presented for publication, and that's with the communications group. So that's the reason I said it can go to the committee. I don't care who else looks at it; anybody can look at it. But the people that are going to approve it are the editorial board.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I think we can only have. We wouldn't really want to go into that.
Yep. All right.
Bob Nicholson, Basil, I think there's an intermediate step because we are scattered around the country. When you have articles that the committee is going to approve as the editorial committee.
Yeah.
If there are members of the board who are from those areas of the country they can report them to the editorial committee to fix, so that the whole board needs to see the draft, not to approve the draft, but to be sure that it is as accurate and helpful as possible.
That sounds right. So I'm going to say that the editorial board then can send it to the entire board or anybody else. The fact is it's their job to make sure it's right. If that requires the entire board looking at it, they send it to the entire board.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
It would make sense to me. That's the reason we have an editorial board. If Bob's correct, and I have no reason to think he isn't, and we need a broader vetting of our newsletter to get the right inputs, then we make it as broad as we need to make it. But I think it's theirs to do.
All right.
I don't think we have to do it as a board. The editorial committee is empowered to do that.
Okay. And that we shall do.
Okay.
And then there's just one other thing that we wanted to try out on you, is that there was a proposed editorial calendar for the fourth quarter of 2017 and for the quarterly editions for 2018. But I'm not going to force that on us right now. It's really committee work. And so the next committee that meeting that we have, I'll try this out on you. But it's really things that would be done the fourth quarter of 2017 plus the 4 quarters in 2018, and I'll forward that on to members of the committee for your review.
I think that's really an important thing that you do here, Ruth. And I think that the Lifeline is such an important part of what we do. I think that editorial calendar, perhaps we ought to think about putting it on NaCCRA.com. I mean, members really need to know what's coming and what so when we solicit articles for Lifeline, you know, if something happens, how do you get broadly available to our membership?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just making a suggestion here, but I think that editorial calendar and the dates by which things are due and when they're processed is really pretty important to us.
Okay, that's easy to
How
do.
about you, Ann? You're the webmaster. Are you comfortable with that?
Good idea.
All right, that'll be wonderful.
Okay.
And so we'll proceed on that, and I will talk with Kim, and we'll get things squared away and on its way to you.
Okay. All right. So now
that's it from here for this moment.
Anything else with you on editorial board implementation?
We do have a motion on the floor.
Oh, forget that.
We do have the motion on the floor regarding.
And it was moved and seconded.
That was the call. The question was moved and seconded.
Yeah, and I was called the question. So Basil,
I thought we voted that. Did we not vote it?
You voted on calling the question.
Oh, we didn't vote on the issue then, huh?
The main motion, no.
What's the motion?
This was to have an article in the news and notes and also in the next Lifeline about the outstanding membership recruitment work at El Castillo and the work done by Martha Marks in that area.
Okay.
All right. All in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Aye.
Who's that, Jack?
Jack.
Okay. One no vote. Anybody else?
I'll abstain. See, Martha Marks has not done membership work. She is an influence in.
She quit.
So, I mean, just say acknowledgement of Martha Marks and not try to define it too carefully.
Yeah, I'm with Bob Nicholson. I feel the same way he does about alienating somebody unnecessarily.
Bob, would you draft?
Enough.
Would that be useful? Since you understand the issue?
Yeah, it's a tricky issue. I think I mean, let's don't get knotted parliamentary where we always do. My recommendation would be just to leave the minutes, item number 4, just leave it that way, and with Basil's.
I think we've already voted.
We've already covered this.
Yeah, we voted that.
Well, let's don't do it. Let's don't do anything else in the minutes.
That's right.
There were 2 absentations and there was 1 negative vote. That's 3 people who voted it, who didn't vote for it.
Okay. So the no votes are 3. And the yes votes are how many?
Yeah.
Matheson voting for.
Jack, are you voting for?
Jack.
Walt's voting for.
Walt. Ruth, Walt, Basil, you're not voting?
Nope, I'm not going to let the board see how it is. We got 3 no votes.
And Bob Nicholson, so.
Bob Nicholson, the last time I heard from him, he abstained.
So it's 3 and 3.
I voted,
Pat Matheson 4.
Okay,
right.
so it carries, okay?
So it's approved.
It is approved, and that's the end of the
Thank
business. We voted to
Thank you.
do that. We need to move on.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Dues and memberships, okay?
Before we leave this item 6,
Mhm.
it says in the agenda here that there's a discussion of branding. Branding.
Hold
We
on.
haven't discussed that. I have no idea what that's talking about.
Ruth, this is Ruth, and I was not clear either. Basil, could you get me squared away?
Which number are you looking at?
It's 6, and it's the first one, discussion of branding.
Oh,
And that really is a marketing kind of thing, is it not?
it is. It is. And what number?
It's,
The issue
so
of
there were three
issue-
topics: discussion of branding, website, lifeline, and more.
The branding issue is just the commonality of our media, and the major reason it's there is that we have to order new stationery, and the stationery that we're being ordered. Do you have that handy? That Kim Barclay is waiting to order new stationery, which I think is available to us. But as you can tell from not only News and Bits, not only the new newsletter and the website, we're coming up with a common brand. When you look at the web at NaCCRA.com, when you look at the newsletter, when you look at News and Bits, you can tell that it's a NaCCRA brand. That is the idea. That was what was part of the branding initiative, that was part of the communications priorities.
Okay, I do have that stationery thing. So I know we had discussed color and what have you, and the leader. So I think that's all pretty well set.
I think the sense of this, unless somebody wants to raise an issue, we've already looked in on the website what it's going to look like. You just looked at it. You've been looking at a lifeline copy tonight, which gives you the new appearance, and you've been getting News and Bits in that format. So
that's great.
The only thing we were doing here was acknowledging that there is a common branding, and it is going to carry through to the stationery of NaCCRA.
That's it.
So it does need to be covered. Thank you for bringing it up. But there's no voting. I don't think we have to vote on that. The communications people have pretty much taken care of that. But we did want to be aware of that.
Bob Nicholson signing off. I've got to get downtown. Basically.
Okay, fine. Thanks, Bob.
All right.
All right.
All right. The Congress is the partners. I have to talk about this. Has the board had an opportunity to look at the partners contract? There are 2 pages in that partners contract, and you all have a link document to that new partners contract. Have you had a chance to look at it?
No.
Maybe get it in front of you. Let me just give it a minute, and then I'll kind of walk you through what we have. I lose the documents on this wonderful screen.
I've got it in front of me.
Okay. Yeah, I've lost it. I have to go find it to myself now. Okay, meeting agenda. partner's proposal that we have has 2 places in it where it talks about things that are of interest in this board. The July 5 minutes approve the offer of the, I've got the lawnmower back, so I'm going to mute myself if it overwhelms me. I can't do anything about that. But on item 4 of the document, which is on the 2nd page, the retainer from partners has been increased. $1,000 a month, which is not the change, but the $600 a month is the change. And if you want the description of what that involves, it's back down to the bottom. The scroll identifies, first of all, who partners are, the financial work that they do for us, the membership work. Number 4 is the membership processing, and number 5 is publications. And this is makes the responsibility of partners to receive the final proof copy of Lifeline, to print it, do all the good things to it, send it to the outside graphic designer. I might point out the outside graphic designer is a option. Every issue we only pay if we employ the graphic designer. But the increase in the partners fees is a common. It happens every month, and it's in anticipation that the Lifeline will go to 6 copies per year effective 2018. So those are the 2 parts and of the document that you have to see. And down at the bottom of page 11, I think it is, yeah, it says the publication scope of work is based on a minimum of 4 in a calendar year and a maximum of 6. So with the with a maximum page count of 12. So each edition could have as much as 12 pages. Of course, we pay for them, but we'd have a minimum of 4 issues a year, and we could go to 6 for the same amount. So that's what's in the contract that you approved last month. I thought I owed it to you to take the contract before I signed it and show it to you. Are there any comments or feedback that you'd like to give?
Nope.
None.
Did you say that the retainer went from $1,200 to $1,600?
Yeah, that's correct. It went to 1,000. We had $600. It really amounts to $300 a month is what it amounts to.
Okay.
But anyhow, I gave you a copy of the entire contract so you know what it is that Partners has. It was always a mystery to me. So this is, last month we looked at the proposal that we'd received from Partners, that this is the actual contract, not yet executed, but I wanted this board to see it before I did.
Mr. Chairman.
I don't need an approval on it, I don't think, but I just wanted it of interest
It's an FYI.
to board members. Okay?
Chair Liz Tiedemann here.
Yeah, Liz.
Thank you. As a supporting member, I have a concern about this.
Okay.
My concern is that the board has not yet evaluated some materially significant information related to Partners' performance for NaCCRA. And last month, I was not given the opportunity to ask the questions or provide the information that I think the board needs to evaluate. And this month, you're going to execute a copy of a contract spending more money with Partners. And it seems to me that it is not a completely informed decision-making process. I don't want to spend time on this right now, but I have some concern about whether this is a good decision for NaCCRA.
Okay. Now, what do you base that on, Liz?
Thank you for asking. To put it concisely, Bennett Napier created a corporate entity in Florida without having the authorization of the NaCCRA board to do that. And while that corporate entity existed, each year he was representing himself to the state of Florida as being an officer or director of NaCCRA, which he has never been.
Oh, I remember that, yeah. Mhm.
And in each year's filings with the IRS, NaCCRA represents to the IRS that a governing person is Senate a peer. And according to decision-making that's ever been recorded in the minutes, he does not qualify as a governing person of NaCCRA. So the quality of the service that Partners has provided has created public records about NaCCRA that create a lot of questions in the minds of potential members, potential donors who pay attention to due diligence matters.
Okay. All right, and we have that as a matter of record. That has been brought up before by you, Liz, and I appreciate that. Are there any performance issues other than that you're raising?
Good question. I don't see any minutes showing that any officer is presenting to the board the work that Partners is doing for the officers. I don't see any report to the board from Partners on what the work is. For example, there's no set of minutes that ever shows a filing to a state or federal agency either has been filed or is ready for review before filing. In addition, what I saw in the July 3rd proposal is that Partners would file documents. Partners isn't only filing the documents, Partners is executing the documents.
Okay.
That is materially significant and should not be kept from the board.
Okay. All right, so what you're recommending, I guess, is an evaluation of the performance of Partners. I have to say, for the interest of the board, I've found Partners to be very responsive.
Yes, they are.
They have,
And this is Ruth here. Check with Charlie Polk and see the background and how that was established. Of that firm.
Well, Liz raises a point, and so we can honor that, and thank you for that, Liz. And we should on any contract evaluate performance, and so we can take that on.
Please do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody, any other comments on this? Okay. So I'm going to go past that, and I will let you know that I will sign that probably within the next couple days. Editorial, let's see what.
We've covered that.
Yeah, we have, haven't we? You don't want to cover it again?
Nope.
Dues and membership. Walt, what you got?
Yeah, the members of the committee are Ron Whalen from New Jersey, Jim Haynes from Virginia, and Mark Morowitz was the CPA and our treasurer from Georgia, as well as myself. One of the concerns I have is that any recommendations we make for dues do not adversely affect the NaCCRA in the future. And in order to do that, I would like the committee to conduct some scenarios looking at the future with these possible dues changes that have been proposed and see what the real impact is. But let me go through the ones that have been proposed and very briefly for you that we intend to look at. The first one has to do with a dual structure. It's been proposed that we have a $10 surcharge for those people who would like paper copies of the Lifeline. I've done some back of the envelope calculations, which tell me that we can probably support up to 6 copies a year at that rate. But I want Mark to redo that work just to make sure, since he's a CPA, he probably can do a better job than I can do, and validate my back of the that raises a question in my mind. If we have a dual structure, do we need to stay at $20 for the base? And could it be reduced to, let's say, $18 or even $15? And I want to take a look at that. I think it might be an incentive if we could reduce the baseline somewhat under those circumstances with a dual membership structure. That will be the first thing that we will look at. Some of the things that follow-on ideas relate to rebates. We've had two proposals for rebates. I would like to look at those again and see how they will affect us in the future as membership grows, and then make a recommendation to the board based on that analysis. In the future, we may want to do some things that I don't recommend we do these right away. Florida has suggested that if we have a universal membership from a CCRC, that the dues be $2. Obviously, that's not sustainable, but the question is, what would be sustainable under those circumstances? Would $10 be enough, or would we want to stay at 15? Could we do it on the basis of units rather than people? Say, if a CCRC had 200 units, they would pay for 200 membership, and then all the independent residents would be considered members. Those are some of the things we want to look at for the future. It may be hard to get 100%. Could we do it for 90%? Those are kind of things that we look at. Further than that, at some point, as we grow and our income, get a lawyer on retainer so that we have good legal advice for all the things we do. We can't afford it right now, but at some point we may be able to, and we need to look at see if we can find out when that point will come, not in terms of time, but in terms of how many members we have that will support it. The same thing can be said for an advocate or a lobbyist in Washington, D.C., and for perhaps looking at additional management support. I think those are things that we would want to look, the board would want to look at, but it's infeasible to do it. So at the present time, we want to look and see if we can estimate in terms of membership growth when those kinds of ideas may be feasible for the board to consider.
Well, Walt, I want to respond to what you put on the street so far, and I know members of your committees have seen that. It's really I would call a framework for analysis of dues. And right now, you mentioned that the FLICRA people made us an offer of 2. Last year we had and we're still honoring the agreement with Washington State for the $10. We know we've got a good analysis now that says it costs us about $1 every time we per copy to print and mail. So if we go with digital every time we do 6 copies a year, we're talking about a $6 cost differential. So there are many factors to build in, but I think it's important that we be equitable across the organization, and that's about the only input I'll get at that time, because if Florida got 2 and somebody else gets 10. You know, it just seems to me that the committee could really do us a favor by coming up with what's equitable for all the community and state organizations that we have. And right now there are some differences, at least in terms of offers, if you talk in terms of Florida. But I'm hopeful that we can come up with something. And I do think the rebates give us a chance to build program. Without local program at the community level, memberships are pretty dry stuff. And one of the things that I like at my place that NaCCRA has that, quite honestly, NaCCRA does not, is a good monthly program. There's educational stuff happening all the time. There's legislation every month. And I think we have to have some deliverables at the unit level. So I think the value for me is not so much what we set the rate at, but what kind of programs we can develop at the community level. So I'm going to shut up.
That's key, and I agree with you 100%. Truth.
So anyhow, thank you for that framework and putting that together. And I'm sure that people like Ron Whalen are probably chewing on it already.
I have a couple of comments and questions about membership.
Okay.
First of all, we've introduced a new concept just very recently, and that's a Congress. And I assume that the Congress that Basil has in mind is a Congress of community CCRC resident associations. That is, the Congress is made up of the spokespeople for the communities. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Well, I was actually thinking broader than that. I think it could be individuals. We have asked in what we put on the street so far. I would think that most of the valuable input would come from our community organizations who could come together with common issues. State organizations ought to have specific input. But what I'm really coming after, Gene, is to try to isolate those items that are RCs. And if we can get a good data bank out of this solicitation. I'm not so much interested in where it comes from, but that we end up with something we can really chew on. In other words, when we build a program, the program has to respond to a need. And so how do we define the needs? Well, my idea of the Congress, and I don't know whether this will work or not, to be quite honest, but it is a way of soliciting from our 2,100 members the opportunity to feed inputs into the central organization. I hope we're overwhelmed and it takes 90 days to sort through it all, because I don't think we have a good contact with our membership, particularly in those states that don't have state organizations. We've got some memberships out there that languish in places like Illinois that are big states like California and Oregon and other places that really ought to be able to add a robust nature to what we're doing in NaCCRA. So I hope it's a way of identifying those things that are most important that we can respond to and attract greater memberships, greater community memberships, more states than just the 10 that we now have. So does that make any sense to you? That's kind of my thinking in the kitchen English.
Well, that's one of the questions I had, we are still trying to get additional states to become members.
That's right, and that's what I'm hoping we'll try to build.
But this is not on our membership application, and also communities.
That's right.
Now, when you said Congress, I've envisioned getting in touch with people who are not members of NaCCRA, but getting in touch with people who are in CCRCs, who are the leaders in their own CCRC because they're
like resident council chairs. Yeah.
And asking them to stay in touch with us on issues members of NaCCRA or not. The Congress doesn't have to be made up just of NaCCRA members.
I would hope it isn't. I hope we get, but I don't know how to reach the rest of the people. You know, if you've got some thoughts on that, I think we can invite anybody to this. Anybody who's a resident, a member or a potential member of NaCCRA. And all that means is they live in one of these places. They know what life is like on the ground.
So you may be able to find out some of that information from the state organizations. As we have in Connecticut, there's 17 CCRCs. And so we could contact them that way. Through that organization.
Any connections that we can make that make our data that we are acquiring during this Congress more robust and more accurate, to me, are welcome.
Mm-hmm.
How about the rest of you? Walt, what do you think?
I agree. I think as much information as we can get is important, because if we do our analysis, we're going to make some assumptions. We have no idea at this point whether those assumptions are really good ones or not. And the more information we get of that nature, those assumptions are going to be better.
Go ahead. How about you, Ron? Was that you that was speaking up?
To this point, we don't pay a whole lot of attention to all the names and all the CCRCs. It's just, you know, we're an organization of organizations, and the presidents of the resident associations are the people we focus on, as well as maybe a few people within each of the CCRCs. But kind of the philosophy that NaCCRA has had is that every person is an individual person, and we need to know who they are. There's a trend here, small trend. We have a couple of communities, community chapters, and there's and more recently Applewood went and got a community chapter. So maybe let's get everybody to have one, because we could do that. We could influence all the CCRCs in New Jersey to have everything.
Yeah.
And if we did that, then we would try to get all the names that they would possibly come up with, and there has to be a benefit. It's hard to find exactly what the benefit is in getting a community.
I also think there's a little bit of realism about how we get our money today. You know, basically we got about $50,000 we get from member dues, and 40,000 of that comes from individual members, about 5,000 from states, about 5,000 from communities. We got 43 communities, $200. You can do the math. About 8,000. You know, 20 times 200 times 43. Same thing at the state level, 10 times 500. So, but most of our dues today are coming from individual members. Most of our dues revenue, about 80% of it, as a matter of fact. And if we want to average, you know, let's say we get to 2,500 members and we have a base individual membership of $20 a member, we could do some things. But right now, all we can do really is to keep the door open unless we drive greater members. And the only growth I've seen in my analysis of our financials is in the individual members.
Yep.
Yeah, I have some observations to make too about Washington State. Washington State, the people who become members of Washington State and NaCCRA pay $20 in dues, and then they get $10 back. So
yeah,
we're only collecting $10 from each of those members, right?
But that will be remedied, Gene, by what Walt's doing. That was the idea. The agreement was made with Washington State last year, sometime 2016, and it was made by competent authority of this board, as best I can tell. So we continue to. If Walt comes up with a digital membership, and let's say that ends, you know, we had $10 to the dues increase that we can play with. It goes way back to March or April board meeting. if we, I see that being evened out by this, by whatever Walt's group brings back for dues levels. Because it shouldn't be different. I mean, if $10 is the right differential, then Florida should have the same option, and so should Connecticut or wherever else it is. But I really think it has to be equitable across the NaCCRA organization, because I've gotten some feedback on it as well, as the same thing you're talking to right now.
Well, and another thing is that, you know, in my last issue of Lifeline, I did not list Washington as a state member because they don't pay state dues. But Jack insisted, you know, that they had to be listed as members.
Yeah.
Why are we considering them? I mean, they were put up with the rest of the member states, even though they don't pay any dues at all.
Well,
I mean,
we've got different.
$500.
Well, yeah, we have, you know, we had it, as far as I'm concerned, and as I look back on it, it was an experiment. It was an experiment because there weren't any individual members in Washington State, and we did generate a pot full, but we also offered some unique things. I can't revisit that. You know, we can't unfry that egg. And we'll tell whether that was a good investment, because now Washington members are paying separate for their Washington dues, and it still is a net $10. You're right in what you say, but that will be consumed or superseded by this dues structure that Walt's group is putting together. So I think that will be. I think we'll have an equitable arrangement. Sure, it is different in various states.
So you're telling me that right now they're paying their dues directly to Washington State, $10.
But they're not getting a print copy. The difference is the justification. It's like our second person in a housing unit. Our justification for having less dues for the second person in a unit is that we only send one newsletter there. I think that's still the case. That differential's $5. But in Washington State only gets a copy that they have to reproduce and of the Lifeline. So
let me get this straight now. Everybody who's a member of the Washington State Association is also a member of NaCCRA, or not?
They have an option now, and they have since the beginning of this year, because they're billed separately. Hopefully they'll all be members, but they have that option every time they renew their dues.
So when they're billed for NaCCRA membership, what's the billing? $10?
I think it's $20. That's the dues.
It's how much?
I don't want to answer that, Gene, because I'm not sure exactly how that billing works. You're right about the net amount that stays with NaCCRA is $10. I don't know how the pluses and minuses work, but I know that basically the NaCCRA, the Washington chapter, the Washington members are paying a net of $10 for their membership.
For Washington.
In the state of Washington, yes. Their NaCCRA dues, they don't get the Lifeline, and their dues are $10. That's the major difference.
Well, they're not members of NaCCRA if they're only paying Washington State dues.
No, they're paying NaCCRA dues separately. They pay NaCCRA dues. They pay
NaCCRA dues separately?
Yes, they do. That wasn't always true, but it's true now, and it has been, I think, since 1 June is when that was changed. So they are separate, but at one time they were actually started as a chapter of the state organization. So it's got some history, but the point, consistent basis across the organization.
Basil, could you move your chair so we can see you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't see because I've got my NaCCRA website up in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Can you see me now? Do I look okay?
You look great.
Okay, thank you. All right.
This is Ruth here. It's 20 after 2, and I've got to leave here at 2:30. So
Okay,
could I give
let's
my,
just wrap this up pretty soon. I think we can do it. Do you have anything else on editorial policy?
no,
Okay, let's go then to, there is a video out there. Ruth, you want to talk about New Orleans for a minute?
if I could.
Okay.
I think we're in pretty good shape. I know that after a lot of fiddling around, we were able to come up with the housing units at Hilton Gardens in about a block from the convention center. Also, it was very clear, I hope, from Kate that you had to make your registration for leading age for the conference in order to be able to get housing in any of those, even the ones that Kate had figured out we could stay in. So where we are actually staying is Hilton Gardens, and she was able to come up with the rooms, and but they were all on her visa, and in order for all of that to happen, people must have, and Jack Matheson, I hope you figured out how to register for the leading age portion, and then to note down that the hotel that we are be able to stay at is number 5538, and that's Hilton Gardens. She was able to get a block of rooms set, and all things being equal, Jack, you're on that listing. So, but you have to, number one, be registered for the leading age conference, and then the housing comes next. So we're hoping that's all set. We have worked with Sharon Sullivan, who is our leading age contact and liaison, for all the information that we have so far tentatively on our program, and she's been so cooperative. So at this point, she has our room for the Saturday meeting, and I assume it's at the hotel, at the Marriott, which is the host hotel. But we'll keep you posted on all that. But so far, things are in really good shape. Our exhibition hall is set, and we have the booth ready to go. I just received yesterday the pamphlets from Jack coming that we will distribute to people at our booth. Any other information that we want to give out to people who go past us could include, and probably should include, copies of the Lifeline and very, very pertinent other information that we have that is current and also up to date and that kind of stuff. So at this point, we are in good shape. Basil's been in touch with Sharon, also having to do with Katie Sloan, who is the director of Leading Age, and so we're working that scenario out, and also with Brad Breeding. So far, so very, very good. So that's about all I need to report or can report at this point. But we're in good shape for the shape we're in.
Okay, so those are the major things that we needed to have, and I apologize, we did kind of have a little bit more discussion than I'd prefer, but today. But I did want to say just a couple words at the end. Is there anything anybody else wants to address before we adjourn? Okay, I want to talk about this road ahead. Some of this I've said before. But as we approach this Congress, I really think that this board can help a great deal in trying to make it as inclusive as possible. And by that, I mean CCRC residents have a best interest served by becoming part of who we are. And so I have no exclusions. I am certain that the best inputs we'll have are going to be from the senior people that have been involved for a long time and know already what the major issues are. But there are a lot of newer connections that should be very useful. I am thinking that it's just not a exercise to identify the policies and procedures and subjects that we need to address, but it's also a way of identifying talent. And
Yes.
for that reason, I'm going to exercise my job of identifying the nominating and electing committees. They can be one committee. It doesn't require to be done until October, but I'm going to try to do that by the end of August. So, because I'd like to make it so that we are not pushed trying to get people to accept jobs, and hopefully we can get a robust number of nominations for our jobs next year. And not just board jobs, but we also have a lot of committee work that could stand an infusion of some new people that we haven't served before. So I'm hopeful that it's just not a topics, but with the topics and with the infusion, I think it ought to be support for what we, in my opinion, really need. And what we really need is a strategic plan that's financial in nature. And I really hope that Mark had been on the phone today, because the strategic plan that has some numbers on it and some goals on it is essential if we're going to move ahead. So over the next few months, it's just not a matter of getting inputs for the topics of the Congress, but it's a matter of getting inputs for the leadership and new people that will be interested in working with us as a prelude after the Congress is over. I'm hopeful we can spend the last couple months of the year trying to take everything we've done this year in terms of membership websites and all that and congeal it into a really good strategic plan, so that next year it won't be we have a more coherent start to whoever that new board is next year. So I'd like you to think a little longer range. I know it's kind of hard sometimes when you're putting on New Orleans. Your horizon's about 90 days away, but we should really be thinking long term. And I just wanted to say that to the board, because sometimes it's really good for us to step back and say, where in the world are we going? And I really think if we're not going toward a good strategic plan, if we're not going toward attracting new vital memberships, if we're not organizing programs that happen at the community level and make our residents more smarter, that we probably won't be maximizing the course. We won't be doing all that we really need to do for members. It's going to take money if we're going to be a presence in the national scene. The only way we do that is through membership. I probably over commented at the end, but that's really what I wanted to say to the board before we concluded. Is there any reaction or response that you might have before we adjourn?
This is Ruth. I just want to congratulate you for giving us such a great shot in the arm and a good sense of direction. I really appreciate your thought, and I know you've been thinking very, very carefully and planning what is possible. And I just hope that we can get more and more people to volunteer. And but we really appreciate your leadership.
Well, thank you, Ruth. Thank you.
I know what Ruth had to say. I have another comment to make too.
Okay.
I really appreciate your leadership, Basil, and feel like we're getting on the right track.
Uh-huh.
But one thing that I really feel like board members need to be aware of how many new members we're getting every month and where they're coming from. And the only way that they knew this in the past was because there was a page which listed those new members. And you'll that every month you've got new members coming in from Florida, from same states. Somebody's recruiting these, and we need to know who that person is or who those people are, where they're being recruited. We also know not only who they are, but where they live. They're CCRC, actually, and what town they're in. And that's helpful information for all board members.
Okay, and I appreciate that, and I think it is, because, and I've tried, just to respond to you, Jane, have been involved in the local scene here, and the reason I've gotten involved in it is I wanted to see how it was to try to sell NaCCRA, so I know myself, if that makes any sense.
I have to leave, and I'm sorry. I'm hanging up.
Okay, well, let's just call the meeting for adjournment. Is there, anybody else has anything, please get back with me. I'll call the meeting adjourned at this point, and thank you all for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.